All right, here we are at our final studio project. So synthesizing everything we learned, well, in the entire class, but also specifically the skills that we gained after Studio 2. So this is about information design. It's about content encoding and blocking. So for this project, you're going to do a resume. Now remember, whenever I say it's this, like a book cover, it's a resume, a logo, it's not really that. It's not carte blanche of the real world of design. We're working on those specific skills, right, of information design, all the craft principles we learned, and things like that. Space is paramount in this one. So obviously you should read over this completely, but the long and the short of it is that you're going to create a resume, and that's going to give us enough of these different pieces of information for us to encode to create a clean, scannable, easy to digest design. Now, I will say don't use a template, right? Obviously, you can go on something like Canva and see tons of resume templates. No matter what, you have to build it in InDesign anyhow. So you can be inspired by them, but I'll be honest, I went through them and there's lots of errors and things. Just because it's there doesn't mean it's great design. And so I'll show a couple examples of that at the end of this video to show you like things that you're going to do better than these templates that are online. So the first thing know is that you're going to create an asymmetrical 2-column grid, right? So you're not going to do a centered logo. I'm sorry, resume. So you're going to have to divide the page up into different ways. You can have a header area, things like that. From there, right? Well, here's the thing. You should get your content written before you start designing. Don't open up InDesign and think you're going to get your information together. First, design always starts with content. And so you should have your content first. So then, like we did with the Raptor list, right, you can start roughing it out, figuring out the relationships to get it put in there. Also, I don't want you to get stuck on black and white text. And I'll show you later an example of that in the things that I show. During this, you're going to need a minimum of 4 fonts with a maximum of 2 typefaces. So let's remember that a font is things like the regular version, the bold italic version, whereas a typeface is the style. So say you were going to use, Bodoni, you would, if you use Bodoni regular and Bodoni italic, that's 2 fonts. But that's only 1 typeface. So just make sure you do that. I do have a list later in the sheet of historically important fonts, and it would be great for you to look over and explore some of those. Generally speaking, these fonts are going to mostly be very good for the bulk of the information, and then maybe you want something a little fancier for the kind of personality things like headers and your name large and your things like that. I also want you to use at least 2 non-grayscale colors in your text, meaning that, right, so kind of the headings to call out specific information, right? It might be good to use some color contrast. You're going to have to use bullets in some way, or you can bullet-like decorations. So you're going to have to make some kind of a bulleted list. It doesn't have to be the default bullets. And remember, in the InDesign video, I showed how to change the bullet styles. One thing I want you to not do is box in each section. This is about space. So we can easily separate sections via space. Boxing in, I think, never really looks great. Boxy sections are just kind of terrible. One last thing you're going to do is you're going to have to add in a background texture, pattern, or background image, right? So remember, if you're using a texture, you're going to wind up having to really pull it back and make it subtle, so we have the readability contrast. You could use the background image as in the way I showed you how to do it in the video on page background. You don't have to do that. But obviously you still want to make sure you have readability contrast no matter what you do, and you want your image to be of proper resolution. And a picture of you is not going to count as this. That would just be an extra thing that you add. That's not page background. So you could also use, besides a pattern, you could also use just a simple gradient. That would be also acceptable as kind of pattern or texture. So you're going to go ahead and design your resume and make all these choices about the encoding, right? Think about it. You've got the title of, say, like a job you had. And maybe that's the same value as the title of another section. Well, let's actually just jump down to the content that you needed so it's easier for me to explain this. So this is what you're going to have in your resume, right? Obviously, you need your name, all your contact info, and then you need some kind of a headline description, right? So for me, I put something like data visualization and emerging media specialist, or creative who codes, right? Those are kind of the ways I would describe myself, as like this elevator pitch of, kind of sums me up real quickly. Then, right, you're going to have your education, so your degrees or certificates, right? You'll have University of Iowa, location, date, and you could always put expected May 2020 or whatever. Then we need to have some kind of records, right? So work, volunteer, organizations, activities with a minimum of 3, right? So you could combine these all into one list. It really doesn't matter to me. Again, this is kind of a fake resume, but if you choose to use this, so be it. But this is more about the information encoding. So you need at least 3 of these records, and each one of these should have, right, the name of the institution, the title, dates you worked, and a bulleted list. See, this is where you'll likely use your bullets. You don't have to use bulleted list. You could use something different, but you should have like descriptions of your duties, 2 to 3 descriptions of those duties. A skills list. So name some skills, but it can't be a simple list. We need to have some kind of a rating or number of years of experience or something like that. Something to give you something to lay out. Now that's going to be probably enough to lay out. You can, if you wanted to, add other things, but I'll be honest, the less information, the better, because the more room you have for space, right? So I wouldn't really go beyond the things that I have here, but if you really want to and you're really gung-ho about it, you can, right? You shouldn't use an objective statement. You're generally people who, I know this isn't a real resume, but I also don't want just a block of text on it, I guess is what I'm trying to say here. So you'll have that. And so you got to think about like, what things are of equal value here that you'll make, like, so if you, the Raptor list, make the Raptor list exercise that we did your guide for this, right? Remember how I talked through why I made the certain decisions I made, things like that. So that's really what you should think of. Once you have that designed and done, or at least you think you're done, you think you did a pretty good job, I want you to do a sanity check here. See how good of a job you did. And then, of course, obviously, when you identify any problems, I want you then to fix it. So the first thing I want you to do is do a blur test. And this will be simply exporting your resume as a JPEG, opening up in Photoshop and adding enough Gaussian blur so that you can't really read the text, but you can see the relationships of the text. And I'll show that again. I'm going to show this. I'm going to do this blur test live for you with some Canva resumes that I found. After you fix up anything that you've identified in the blur test in your InDesign file, you want to do a block test. And that block test would be just like I showed in the one video of InDesign about how to just add a block just to check the spacing, right? So you want to make sure that spacings are even in places where you expect them to be even. So you want more space between sections, less space between individual records, right? Think about those relationships. And you want them to be consistent, right? Over and over, the same amount of space. So maybe I'll make a separate quick video of that because I don't have anything prepared right now as I open this up and I didn't think of it. Again, this just says, again, you should read all this stuff. Space is really important, right? You should not be afraid of full bleeding your design, right? So don't, again, I don't like boxing. You'll see in one of the examples, there's kind of a box and I don't love it, but we'll do it. There's also this nice page here on me giving you a helpful approach here. I would definitely look through it and take heed of it. One thing you should know is that for as far as reading text, right, 12 point is gigantic. 12 point would be something like your maybe section header or place you work's name. Your bulleted list will likely follow these, like, for serif 9 to 11 point, for sans serif 8 to 10 point, right? Let's not make this comically big. Generally, people, new designers, do a little too much too much font size, too big of font size. So I would definitely go through all this. Also, making nice line breaks is very important. So like when you have your bulleted list and it goes to the next thing, don't leave things like one word as the second thing, as the second line. Try to do everything we thought about making nice line breaks, because all of this stuff is like, this is what a designer does. A designer is obsessed with details and making things as good as possible. So with that, here's the historically important typefaces, and then of course you should go through the rubric and see exactly what I'm looking for. This should be your guide, right, to tell consistency. Encodings and blocking, that's the space, right? Type contrast is obviously a very big important thing. This is what we're going for. I'm not looking for, again, I'm never looking for creativity in these as much as I'm looking for the tenets of design. This is an intro to design class. So I'm going to jump over to Photoshop here and show you a one that I downloaded and just go through some issues here. So this is whatever it is. Well, first of all, ignoring the design, I would say the type contrast on this side is pretty darn good. I don't have a lot of problems with that. And so let me show you the blur test here, right? So with my blur test, like I could tell this and this are the same, and they're obviously bigger and different. This and this and this and this or something. This is a little dark. I might just lower this to like 80% black. The real problem I saw with this one is, first of all, you would never make a bulleted list centered. That is just a type crime as far as I'm considered, so I don't know why this is a graphic designer logo. I would just never do it. Largely with this, I would probably wind up left aligning everything or right aligning everything, because it just looks weird. That's really my biggest issue with that. Let's look at a different one. This is the one I think I really wanted to start with. So again, this one has this box area here. It's okay. I don't love it. It's not that terrible, but buyer beware. So looking at things that are wrong with this, one thing I would say is over here, look at the education. So, I think this is great. Okay, so that's great, this is great, that's great. But Roanoke University, I would probably make that maybe a little bold or something, because the rest of this is, and then this is nice because it's italic, but these two are about the same value, right? I think I might pop up this education one. What else? I really like the way that this one has this split like this. So you don't have to just keep everything left aligned. You can add they subdivided this region. So that's really nice. I think the real issue I have is up here in this work experience. And while, these are 3 different pieces of information and they're separated with these. So that's pretty decent. But then this is, and this are almost, I know this is italic, but it's just not that different. So if you see the blur test, right? Whoops, what did I do here? Oh, for some reason I have that 40%. I was playing with it. So here we have the blur test. Now you kind of see that all this information looks exactly the same, right? So this is where I'd like to fix that kind of area. And so what can we do to fix that area? Oh, that's the block test. Oh, good. I did prepare something. I forgot I was playing with this. Is I would take this and probably bring it down in value. Sorry, I'm recording this video like a week after playing with this and trying to remember what I did. But see now, right, this pops out and that goes there. Now we have these here. I could possibly, this could have maybe been used position or something. So if I had not I, but whoever designed this kind of did this thing, that would separate it further. Obviously, we would get rid of this separator here. Now, this is in Photoshop, so I'm not doing this, right? So maybe that would be better to get that and that information separate. I think that looks okay. I don't love it, but at least it's a different encoding. Again, so you see what I'm doing here. And now if I was to blur it, I'd get a sense that, oh, this is different information than this information. These are both kind of garbage, right? Does it really matter? It does and it doesn't. This is really important, right? What you did, where you worked and where you did. And this is where you have to think of the relationship. Do you put the place you worked as the most important piece of information, or do you put the job you held as the most important piece of information? That's something to think about. This one chooses to do the place that this person worked. I, on the other hand, think maybe it's more important to see your role that you did, but it's kind of up to you, right? Let's look at this last one over here. So we have this one. It's kind of plain. Then again, you're going to have to use two things. My very biggest thing that I absolutely hate, and I will not let you do, even though some people say it's okay, is this. Letting... well, first of all, the biggest problem is this is known as a widow when you have one word on a line. Absolutely terrible, right? This person should have put a soft return right here before Python. Further, right, we would never ever, I think it's a type crime, and some typographers disagree with me, to not use the alignment, right? So this should definitely be above, right? So this should definitely be aligned to that J right there. Let me get rid of this right here. Right? So it should be like this. Now again, I would never let one word go either. I would have hit a return here so that it said Python experience in this line, right? And again, that's breaking for sense. That's the kind of thing I want you to focus on in this class, right? Breaking for sense, using the strong alignment, right? So again, if I was to do this here, I can do this real quick. I'm in, right? Let's do this. I'll just cut that out. Python experience, right? Obviously I can't get this perfect because I'm in Photoshop of a PDF, so I don't have access to the thing, right? But it should do something like this. I don't know why that looks like that. Just so you know, right? So I'm just doing these things quick. So that would be better. Obviously this E should be over there. But that's the kind of things you need to think of, right? And again, same thing over here, like this and this seem exactly the same. At least they're traded there, kind of like that. I like better the work thing. So that's actually not that bad because this and this maybe are about the same, equal, just like in the Raptors thing. I still might consider making this italic or something just to give some differentiation. Things like that. Again, you're going to have to use two colors, so maybe make this a color and let this be. I think that's a little too bold. I don't know. That's just my sense of it. And again, so this was the blur test just to show you, right, kind of how it's okay, but these get really close to each other in this one. So I would look at that and think, well, maybe I could separate this with some color or this one with color, things like that. That's what we're working on in this. So going back to this one, let me go back to then the block test since I don't have to. What I did was draw boxes, and I'm looking for the right relationships. So obviously, like work experience and internship, right? That should be probably your largest separation. Then we have the separation of internship to its group, work experience to its group, right? So those should be exactly the same. Ooh, what I do? I put everything on the same layer. Let me just really quick do this. Right, so whoops, there we go, right, and they should be even. Well, there's a red flag right there. Oh no, because it's the P, the bottom of the P. That's not a red flag, right? So those are the same exact distances, right? That's good. It should be that way. And obviously, right, this, you should never have the same size. So let's say they started this stuff down here. So let me try to do this real quick, right? Right? You should never have this where this is the same distance as this right here, because then you don't know which one this pertains to because it's got equidistance, right? So that's something to watch out for. Never do that, right? This should definitely be closer to its thing to make sure you know that this relates to the stuff below here and you're not wondering which one does it go to. So that's important. So that block test, you'll just basically do this, except for you won't do all black blocks. I ask you to use different colors for the different encodings so you can see that they're different. So that's pretty much it. So you'll do that. You'll what you get to where you think is finished. You'll do a blur test. fix anything you identify there, do the block test, fix anything you do there, and then that's it. You'll be done, and you'll have hopefully a really wonderful information design resume as your final product from this class.